Volkswagen have tried for years, for decades, for 21 years to bring back the original Volkswagen bus in an electric form, or at least in a modern version, with concepts such as the microbus concept from the Detroit Auto Show way back in 2001 and the more recent ID Buzz concept in 2017. It was the 2017 concept that really showed that Volkswagen were serious about bringing it back as an EV. Now, I know what you're thinking, EVs. It's this constant discussion about it not having a soul. It lacks the organic features of an internal combustion engine. And I know exactly what you mean, because when you're driving an internal combustion engine, you feel like you're a part of the machine. The higher you push the pedal, the more it screams and the faster you go up until the red line, until it's time to shift and do it all over again. And I know that's lacking in EVs, but at the same time, EVs will open up a new world of opportunities when it comes to design. And I think the ID Buzz here is a good example on that. So in this video, I'm going to show you all three concepts, starting from the 2001 concept and the design evolution of it from the earliest 2021 version to the almost production ready prototype that they released just last week. But first, let's analyze some of the spec and tech here. The ID Buzz will have the same modular EV platform that you find in the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Audi Q4 e-tron. The bus we see here in this video, this is the shorter Eurospec 117.6-inch wheelbase prototype with an interior layout that resembles more of a commercial van rather than a family car. However, all the US spec buses will come with 3 rows of seats as standard, and that's from what we know so far. In addition to the longer wheelbase, the US versions will also have a bigger battery pack, and I think this is important, than the prototype right here with a 77 kilowatt-hour unit. When you have a larger battery pack located in the bottom of the vehicle, that's obviously going to affect the height of the floor. But thanks to the large volume here of the Buzz, you'll still have an impressive 185.5 inches long interior with a lot of open space inside, which you can customize any way you want. Again, that's a huge benefit with having an electric architecture in a vehicle. And some vehicles, in my opinion, if you're going to bring them back into today's era, very few, but some of them feels like they need to be, or they should be, electric. And I think this is one of these cars. And this prototype was equipped with the base powertrain option, which means it has a single motor powering the rear wheels just as the Volkswagen ID.4, and it makes 201 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque with this configuration. There will also be an all-wheel drive version with dual motors, one in the front and one in the rear. However, regardless of which version you choose, it won't be a speed demon, because every single ID Buzz, when it goes into production, will be limited to 90 miles per hour. And I think that's a smart decision to prioritize range over a higher top speed with this specific type of design package. It just makes more sense, because you don't want to go in a package like this, in a box. You don't want to be doing 150 miles per hour, at least not me. No word yet on any official range figures. However, the goal is to hit at least 250 miles of range on a single charge for the base model. When it comes to charging, we can expect it to have a similar architecture as the ID.4, which means rapid DC charging up to 125 kilowatts. Even though this prototype is extremely close here, what we see here in the video, it's extremely close to being finished, but the final production version will be unveiled on March 9th. So now let's have a look at Volkswagen's attempts here over the past 2 decades to bring back the bus in a modern version. Look at the 2001 version up here. Honestly, when I look at this could be a concept that's released today. The layout, the proportions, everything, this wasn't an EV, this concept, but I think just looking at these proportions with the short overhang, which we're going to see more in the side view, we're also going to have a look at the rear on all these 3 concepts. Looking at the proportions, it looks like it has sort of an EV architecture to it, and I also love the graphics of this. It's not aggressive, it's still a friendly face. If you're gonna bring back the bus, it needs to be a friendly face. It can't be aggressive. That's not at all what the original Volkswagen bus was about. So if you're gonna bring it back, I think having a friendly face like this, almost with a little smiley face at the bottom, that's exactly the right way to go. Roundness of this initial concept is something that I really prefer over what we're going to have a look at now, the current concept, or the prototype from 2022. Now the next one, this was the 2017 concept, and I think this looks even better than the 2001 concept, because here we have the two-tone, the same two-tone that we have in the original, and I really love that they emphasize the logo in the middle right here, so you can have it as a neck. If you want to take the logo off, you can have it as a necklace in a rap video. Perfect for that, and that's exactly what the original had as well. But now you see that we're starting to have more of a modernized version of the headlights, for example, integrated in the surfacing of the body. It looks flush with everything, and it looks very, very EV-ish looking at this, looking at the headlights, and then you have the graphics down here as well. Very EV-like, but as I said, this is one of these cars that really fits as an EV, but you can still see that this is clearly a concept just by looking at there are no door handles here, for example, and this mirror did not work in 2017, and I don't think it's even legal now in the US to have mirrors like that, which kind of sucks, because I think having side view mirrors, it's legal in Europe. I know that by looking at the Audi e-tron models. They have the cameras in Europe, but here they need to convert them into traditional old big bulky mirrors. So this was not legal in 2017, still not legal in the US to this day, but I think it might be one of these versions that you see a difference in the European version compared to the US version in the ID bus as well when it goes into production. And finally, we have the current generation. It looks really cool. This is, as I said, not the final production version, and I like that they made this very colorful right here. It looks like if you know Alias 3D modeling, Alias automotive modeling, you see you can have a shading setting that looks almost like this, where you see all the reflections, and it's very easy to see if there's any problems in the 3D model. And it looks like they took inspiration from something like that, but just made it more colorful and not so monochromatic like we have in that Alias software. But it stays very, very true to the 2017 concept, and I'm really surprised by that. But at the same time, I'm not, because as we've seen before, getting EV concept from concept to production, you don't really have to change a lot with the proportions, because you don't have to fit an engine in it. So you can play around and have a very cool and unique proportions for the EVs that doesn't have to change too much going into production. And I think that's the case right here. We now have a little bit more defined headlights right here, ready for production, and you can see that the lower part right here is definitely changed from this very conceptual layout up top, and then you have a almost regular normal intake in the bottom right here. This is probably for cooling the batteries, and on top of that, looking at the side, you now have door handles, functional door handles. That is also, of course, a necessity if you want to bring this into production. I want to show you the rear view here as well. Same thing here with the 2001. I think this looks so cool just today, and I kind of want to see this as a regular maybe internal combustion production version from Volkswagen, but as we know, they're not going to do an internal combustion version of this specific car. It feels like at this time as well, you had the door handles and you had some really cool graphics, not too conceptual for 2001, 21 years ago. It feels like they could have made some minor changes to this design and put it into production. You can see it's internal combustion because we have an exhaust pipe. That's not something that you see on an EV. And then looking at the 2017 model, it became a lot more into today's decade, I would say, with the surfacing right here, the very smooth integration of the bumpers, and now you have these chamfers, which is a common thing to have, a common graphic detail to have. You see this chamfer down here. These are details that shows that this is done or designed within, I would say, the last 5 years or so. And same goes for the tail lights, very conceptual, but would probably work in today's world with these very slim taillights, which we see in production today, in production vehicles. At the same time, you see it's a concept again with the mirrors and no door handles right here on the side. Other than that, this looks pretty much production ready. And I think when Volkswagen were introducing this in 2017, they were set on bringing this into production. That's exactly what they did with the production version. Down here you can see that they now have a clear light bar in the middle. Very typical for ID models of Volkswagen to have a light bar. I think it suits this truck or this van as well. What I think they could have done a little better to pay more homage to the original van is to bring the taillights a little lower, so they would sit somewhere around here maybe. I'm not sure if that's some regulation regulation that they need to have it at a certain height? Probably, but you could have the main taillights down here and then maybe have some additional lights up here if it's a regulation problem, just to bring it a little more inspiration from the original design from the 60s and 70s. But other than that, we can see that this is pretty much ready for production. You just need to make it into a family van instead of a commercial van like it looks like here with no windows and stuff like that. But you still have the door handles and you still have the same smooth surfacing all over here like we have in the 2017 concept. I really like this concept, and what I want to see is them Volkswagen bringing this into production with two-tone option. If they bring that back, it's gonna definitely be a hit. I'm sure of that. Even if they don't bring the two-tone back, still gonna be a hit because people love the original van and seeing it, or the original bus, and seeing it coming back in any sort of design or shape would just be a hit in my opinion. So looking at the side view, here we see the big difference from the 2001 proportions compared to the 2017 and the 2022. So what I love about this, that I think the 2001 concept do better than any other concept, is this part right here, this view. You see this roundness in the rear corner right here, and this angle, this curvature in the back. I love this design. And then you have these slots here as well, reminiscent of the original bus, and you still have a two-tone design here, even though a little subtle with these two light blue shades, but I think it suits the time, the 2001 era, and also if it has this surf vibe to it, this color. Now comparing it to the 2017, you can see that we have a clearly defined two-tone color theme right here, which I really love. You still have these, but now they're turned into 3 slots, which doesn't really matter as long as you have the slots there. I think that's the most important thing, to bring that graphic features into today's version. But looking at the greenhouse is the thing that hasn't really changed at all from in 21 years, from the early 2001 concept to the 17 concept and then into production as well. What has changed that I think they could have maybe worked a little more on, but at the same time I don't know the background and challenges, the regulations that come up the last 20 years. Maybe it was impossible to do that, but what I would love to see is this implementation of the rear end in the new version, meaning having more of a curvature in the rear end, more of a retro inspired feel in the rear end proportions, and also have more curvature and not make it look too like a traditional van. That would just be boring, and I think this is borderline on that level to being a normal traditional van, specifically comparing it to this 2001 concept that doesn't look like a traditional van at all. You can definitely see that they took a lot more inspiration from the 60s in the 2001 concept than they did on the prototype of 2023. Overall, this is one of these cars that I'm really excited the Volkswagen has decided to put into production. I think this is going to show that Volkswagen actually have a fun side to their design studio, because lately I feel like Volkswagen designs, they've been kind of generic and boring. Even the ID versions, they look a little more funky, but still kind of restrained, and this needs to be in Volkswagen's lineup to bring some fun and some color and some retro inspiration back into Volkswagen, which has such a great history of really cool models. I hope this is just one of a lot of future models that Volkswagen decides to bring back as EVs, since they have such a cool history of so many iconic and beautiful designs.